Hi, just wanted to offer a trigger warning for this episode. We do talk about topics such as trauma and suicidal thoughts, as well as long term illness. So, if any of those things would be too much for you to listen, please just take care of yourself.
Hi, and welcome back to the HSP Connection with me, Philippa Robinson.
And me, Robbie Lee. This is where we share our stories, insights, and strategies to help fellow highly sensitive people navigate their own path to living a fulfilling and meaningful life.
We're on a mission to reclaim the word sensitive and help the world see the strength in sensitivity. So, Robbie, what are we talking about today?
Well, Philippa, a couple episodes ago, I mentioned that I might be talking about my healing journey, and I've decided today's the day. And I'm a little nervous about it, not because I don't think there's anything profound that I'm sharing, but just it's vulnerable to talk about health. And, I'm not at the end of my journey. I don't have the big, and now it's all done, ta-da, I'm not there. I'm still in the middle of it. And so it feels vulnerable, but it also feels important because the more that I talk to people, I realize I'm not alone in these struggles. And part of my journey is not feeling shame, and we'll talk more about that, but not feeling shame for having illness in the first place. So I'm speaking about it and putting it out in the open.
Well, wow. And the day is here, so we're going to do it. And thank you for being brave and bringing, your courageous self to this conversation. And I'm sure you're absolutely right that you are not alone. And you're going to really help our listeners who this is going to resonate with know that they're not alone. So, on behalf of all those people, thank you.
Thank you for saying that. That is definitely my hope, for sure.
Yeah. So, you're kind of, the star of the show today. So where would you want to start? Tell us where it started, if that helps.
I think where I want to start actually is a big kind of when things culminated and had kind of a big catastrophe for me in 2019. I had a migraine, and then I'll work back from there. But I had a migraine that started in February of 2019, and I didn't get any relief from it until October of that year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big migraine.
It was, life altering. I wasn't, I couldn't work, and I couldn't really function in life. It was, for people who don't experience migraines, or even if you do, everybody's migraines are different. It's like a rod that was going through my eye, through my brain. It felt like, oh yeah, that's the closest I could come up to, is a rod going through that. So that was pain, but it was also, I was very dizzy. So the world would spin. So I didn't feel safe on my feet. I was extremely sensitive to light. Light was very painful. Sound was very painful. And so it's like walking around the world in pain. The sun hurts, lights hurt. So then you want to be in the dark, but then the dark is not good for your mood,
Yeah.
And then sound hurts. So it's like talking to people, and just honestly, just existing in the world, like everything felt painful. So, we went to the emergency room. We went to a doctor who then sent us to emergency room. We went to multiple doctors, multiple doctors. And I felt like I had to start every session with, I'm not here for pain medicine. Because they immediately treated me like I was like I was trying to get narcotic pain medicine, and I was making everything up. And so even that which I know that exists in the world, I'm sure. But even that, it's like I had to just say, I'm willing to endure the pain if you could just help me figure out what's causing it. I mean, that alone is a pretty shitty place to have to come from, you know?
Well, it's not like a kind and gentle way to start
No.
your time with that doctor. And I suppose
Right.
it doesn't fill you with a lot of hope, really, if you're having to start off like that when you're already feeling as dreadful as you were.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
sounds just so not helpful on so many levels.
That's how it felt for sure. And I mean, and I just felt overwhelmed. Like everything, it felt like my senses were overwhelmed. And so every little thing felt hard. And then trying to navigate, I mean, trying to navigate the medical system is a thing. But then trying to get people to listen and understand how much pain you're in and then be willing to figure it out. It was hard. And, you know, I couldn't drive. I wasn't going to work. I felt very isolated. So then it starts affecting mental health too, and thinking like this is ever going to end, you know, and going to doctor after doctor after doctor. And for a lot of those doctors just being treated like I was faking, or I mean, we had several doctors like that. My wife would go with me because then I started losing words, and it was like it was hard to remember things, and it's like, you know, it was hard.
And did you need to go from doctor to doctor to doctor because you got to a point with each one of them that they couldn't help you, so then you had to find a different one?
Yeah.
It
would either be they've gone down and done the things they know to do, or it would just be we started getting treated so poorly. Like I went to a neurologist, and every time I went to see him, it's like I had never been there before. He treated me like a complete stranger, and I'm like, okay, well, we've already done all these things. You've already asked me. And he also consistently referred to my wife as my friend. It just pissed me off. I'm just like, can you look at your notes for 2 seconds? But he was also one that was just kind of like, migraines, this isn't what a migraine is. Migraines don't last this long. So we're not seeing anything on the imaging, you know. Well, you know, it's kind of like, oh, well, you know.
It's not good enough, is it?
No, it's not.
No.
And then I worked with a naturopath who was lovely. Like she was wonderful. She believed everything I was telling her. She could see I was in distress. Insurance didn't pay for any of her visits. And so I could go to her for a time, and I went as long as I could, but then my paycheck ran out, you know? And so then it was like, well, then we're trying to go to places insurance would cover. It was challenging. And she wasn't able to provide, she hadn't found the magic bullet either. But at least she was believing me, and that felt nice, you know?
Yeah. Important. I'm sure
It's
nice,
so
but
important.
Really important.
You're right. More than nice. It was really vital.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of different practitioners, both Western medicine and alternative medicine. And eventually what helped, I did find a different neurologist who was a migraine sufferer himself. And, you know, I remember, first of all, I had to wait several months to see him. I can't remember how long now, but I remember at the time going, oh my God, like, because you're already in so much pain. It's just like, we have to wait this many months. But I remember going in his office and thinking, well, okay, well, let me give you the spiel because I've given it so many times now, and expecting him to look at me like that doesn't happen. And he said, oh, yeah. And the moment he said that, I just started crying.
Oh.
Because again, it was somebody who believed me. I was like, okay, yeah. So he was helpful. Yeah, I might.
Yeah, I can,
Yeah.
you know, can hear the emotion, just you telling us the story.
Yeah, I mean, just remembering how I think I'm just, for any medical professionals listening, please believe people when they tell you they're in pain, even if you can't find a reason for it,
Yeah.
And for non-medical professionals, I mean, let's just believe people when they tell us.
Well, for
things.
anybody.
Yeah.
Let's believe people when they say they're in pain, that they are experiencing things that we might not be able to understand.
Yeah.
But let's believe them.
Right. Oh. So that neurologist was able to help me get me on some medication, which I mean truly just helped save my life, because I didn't see him until almost a year after my migraine started. And I had seen I had gotten some relief from the second chiropractor I went to. So when I said I didn't have any release till October, I went to see him and got some relief. And then like the next day, the migraine came back, but it was like I had a window of non-migraine for a moment. And so I kept seeing him, and it would be like have these moments of not having it. And then we saw the neurologist, and he got me on some medicine, and it has changed my life because I can function again. But also I know what's true is we haven't gone the underlying route. Like, we're helping my system calm down enough to not constantly be in a migraine. I still get migraines sometimes, but I'm functioning. Like, I see clients now and I have a podcast, and I'm functioning in the world, not fully to where I would love to be, but I'm also not alone in a dark room, curled up in a ball, wondering if it's worth, continuing living, if this is what living was going to be.
Yeah. Didn't feel like, because that didn't feel like living.
No, I mean, my world was just pain with no hope, and I couldn't, it's like, how do I interact with anything? It was really challenging. And I'll tell you the thing that got me through, because I wondered about suicide multiple times. I didn't have any plan, but I did think about, would that be the best? Like, if this is what's going to be, if there's nothing else, would that be better? Because I felt like a burden to my wife, and we definitely need to put a warning on this, a trigger warning on this episode. But I wondered, but I also know I'm not the only one who has thought about these things.
No,
like this.
and I mean, I want to say thank you for being brave to say that, because you're definitely not the only one to have thought that. And it goes back to something you mentioned before about shame, and maybe we'll come back to that. But just by putting it out there, that being in chronic pain and not being believed and not getting relief and not seeing at the end in sight absolutely led you to think, what is there any, can I carry on being here? Can I carry on living? Because this is not the way I want to live.
And what's the point, really? Because also I felt like I wasn't of use to anyone. I just felt like a drain. And I'll tell you, like, literally my wife saved my life, because I was brave, and I told her I was, thinking about that. Because I know, I mean, it was a drain on her. I mean, that was a fact. She was we don't live close to her work, and we didn't live close to any of our doctors. So she was driving to work, and then driving home, and then driving me to a doctor's appointment. And then, like, it was a lot on her shoulders, plus taking care of the things that I used to take care of. Right? Plus trying to help me navigate these doctors and navigate, I won't even, there was a whole thing that went on with my short-term disability, and it was just a bunch of, none of that went smoothly. But I told her about it, that I was just like, is this even worth it? And she's just like, I need you to be here.
Mm.
And those were like, those words just cut through. And I said, okay, well, if she's saying that because I'm most poorly impacting her, and if she's still saying that to me, then okay.
I need you to be here no matter how
Yeah.
you are feeling and being, and I just need you to be here.
Yeah. Which I'll tell you was really hard for I didn't understand it. I believed her though. And thank God I did.
Yeah.
You know. But I really didn't understand it because I kept thinking, well, I'm not useful. And it's just like, wow, how much do we tie our worth to usefulness?
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah. I mean, I've really had to grapple with a lot of things through this, you know, and like I wasn't earning money and I wasn't using my gifts the way that I knew how to do them. And I wasn't very useful around the house, you know, and all of that. And my wife is like, your presence is meaningful to me. Like your very presence. So again, I didn't get it. I didn't understand. I couldn't understand it, but I was really grateful for it and I held on to it. And thank God, because I did find help. And things have definitely improved since then. But that was a year of hell. I mean, it was literal hell. And then right as I was starting to feel better, I still wasn't driving myself, but I was like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can speak. I can be in a place. Like every time we went somewhere, Philippa, I had noise canceling headphones on. I had glasses over my glasses to try to shade as much light out as possible. I would wear a hat. And then sometimes when we were in the car, I'd have to put a towel over my head because sun would still get in and it would blink and it would make me want to vomit and spin out. Like it would. So after a year, I was like, I could walk around in the world mostly like a normal looking person, like without all of that. You know, sometimes I'd have a flare up and I didn't need to do that. But then, but still not feeling like myself. And looking back on it now, I'm like, well, I was also like, that was very traumatic. Like that whole experience was traumatic.
Yeah.
And I hadn't processed any of that trauma, right?
Yeah. I was feeling that. Actually, that's what was coming up for me, that whole time was trauma for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I was working so hard to try to get back to work.
Yeah.
And so I was just, at that point, I was just kind of like telling my doctors, I think I'm good to go. I'm good to go. I'm good to go. And inside I was just screaming like, oh God, I don't want to have to go back to that. I don't feel ready. But also we need a paycheck or we're going to lose our house. Like that was also real for us. And then COVID hit. So then the whole world shut down. And I know COVID was awful for a lot of people. And it was a blessing for me in a lot of ways because the whole world slowed down and it helped me to have that slower world to kind of navigate and try to get back into instead of jumping right back into super fast paced everything.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a lot more tears than I was expecting. I don't know why.
Well, because it's tough. It was tough, and you're saying it all out loud.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully this is letting go of some of the emotion around it.
Yeah.
The tears.
Yeah. Hopefully so.
Yeah. Are you okay to carry on?
Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Okay.
I think what I wanted to talk about too is kind of how since then, I've been doing a lot of healing about that episode, like about that time period in my life, the trauma of it. the not being believed, but then also just how I felt about myself, like the worthiness
Yeah.
of like, yeah, that touched a nerve.
Yeah.
And still grappling with, I sometimes feel like I'm trapped in a body that I don't recognize. Like because my body doesn't function the way it used to.
Yeah. Used to when? When is that reference point?
Like even just prior to the migraine going
Okay.
off. And
Okay.
now looking back, I can see that things were building up. Which is one of the things I've been looking at. It's just like, why did this happen?
Yeah.
Not like a why me type of thing, but it's just like, kind of like, how did this happen? Why did this happen? Were there signs I missed,
Yeah. You want to understand.
There were things I was ignoring. Like, just a lot of stress at work and not sleeping, using sugar to try to fuel myself because I was so exhausted, sugar and caffeine.
Yep.
And never having enough downtime. Like my system never was resetting. I felt like I was in constant fight or flight or freeze. And I would experience all of those things.
Yeah.
I would respond in all three of those ways. Yeah.
Cycle around them, I should imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just kept pushing through anyway. And I've looked at, why did I do that? And part of it was the American culture of work and not like, it's not good to take off sick time. Now, I'm not saying I didn't take off sick time, because I did. Like I was calling out probably once a month at least, especially like toward when my migraine hit, because it was just like I was doing everything I could. And then I would just be like, my body couldn't function. And I would be having like 1 or 2 day migraines, and I'd be like, things like that would happen monthly. And I didn't go to the doctor for that. And I didn't change my work, because my work wasn't a good fit for me, for my system.
Yeah.
And I just kept pushing. It was just like, well, just try, just keep going, just keep going. At the same time, I was getting my coaching certificate. So I was like, well, I can get that and then move into something new. But I've been looking back, and it's like, okay, well, why didn't I go to the doctor? I was like, well, that is because I have so many experiences of going to the doctor from childhood through adulthood, where I would go and they wouldn't find anything wrong. And so then it was just like, well, either you're making it up, or they would just say, well, you're stressed. Like, okay, cool. But that doesn't fix the fact that my arm is tingling and is in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
Well, I remember one neurologist said to me, because I was experiencing numbness and pain all through my left arm. And he said to me, I was in college at the time, and he said, do you have any stress? And I'm just like, well, I mean, yeah, but not new stress. Like, well, it's probably just stress. And it's just like, okay. And then that was it.
And that was it.
He's like, oh, no. And then he said, I think you should see a psychiatrist. I was like, okay. And what I heard then was not it wasn't anything, it didn't feel like, mental health is really important and let's make sure that all of you is taken care of, because like I didn't hear that message at all. It felt very dismissive and like this is in your head. Like
Yes.
that,
Yeah.
that's how it felt.
Yeah.
So I do think mental health is really important. And I have seen a psychologist, and my therapist until she retired was one of my favorite people. So I'm not at all opposed to that, but I'm just saying like the way things are presented as doctors.
Yeah.
I have felt very dismissed for
Yeah.
lots of things. And when you're in pain and exhausted and then feeling guilty for taking off work, I think the last thing I wanted was to go to a doctor and hear, well, you don't see anything wrong with you. I just wanted to sleep at that point,
Yeah. And because of your experience of what it has been like in the past as well.
Yeah.
Mainly, you that wound was already running quite deep, wasn't it?
It really was.
People don't believe me. They don't want to help me. They're just going to make me feel worse.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, because they're not going to believe me. They're going to make me feel like it's all in my head. I'm somehow making it up, or I'm just whatever. Mm-hmm. Whatever I need, I'm not going to get.
That had been my experience most of the time. Yeah.
Hi, if you're enjoying listening to this podcast, have you thought about joining our HSP Connection community for more connection with other HSPs? Because really, us HSPs thrive in the community of others.
Absolutely. And Philip and I have created this space on an online platform where we can connect with each other deeply. We're going to have these awesome conversations, and we would love to get to know you over there in that space.
We would. So if you're interested and want to join straight away, there's a link in the show notes. And if you'd like to have a chat with either of us beforehand, please reach out. Now, back to the episode.
I mean, when I was in high school, I had a skiing accident and it dislocated both of my shoulders. I've had a fall and both my shoulders dislocated. And I was treated, went to the ER and was treated just to let it heal. Like there wasn't surgery or anything. But after that point, for a period of a year, my shoulders would dislocate very easily, very readily, doing mundane things. And, I was telling my mom that, and she was a little bit horrified, but also kind of like, well, I'll come back. My mom has this, I'll come back to her in a second. We weren't rushing to the doctor yet, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then when we finally did go to the doctor literally laughed. So I was saying, hey, I'm doing this, this, and this, and my shoulder's dislocated. And I mean, by this point, my shoulders have dislocated 20 plus times. And she laughed at me. Like that was the most ridiculous thing she'd ever heard.
Oh.
And so, we left without, at that point, like we went to her to get a referral somewhere else. We didn't get the referral. Or maybe we did. I'm not good at remembering all the details, but I will say my mom then saw it happen. She was helping me put my jacket on and reaching in to put my arm in my jacket, my coat, my shoulder dislocated. And she saw it happen. And we went through the whole thing. And then she was like, oh, like it really clicked for her because, she saw it. So then she mama bared up and she was like, okay, no, this is really happening to my daughter. We need to get her seen, blah, blah. So we did eventually see a doctor. And thankfully, he took x-rays. Let me say this. Thankfully, he believed me, but he believed me because he saw it, because he actually he pulled on it and dislocated it in front. Yeah, they took an x-ray while they were doing that. So that was actually torturous, to be quite frank.
Of course it was.
Then he brought me back in the room with my mom and he's like, see how easily this comes out? And he was just pulling it out. I turned white and almost fainted, you know.
That sounds barbaric.
I know. And he was the one that believed me, Philippa. Like I
Yeah.
have fond memories of him because he believed me. And then now I'm retelling it going, well, that was actually awful also.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so I think back and I've literally had stomach issues since I was born. I was colicky baby. I've always had digestion issues. I've never figured it out. In high school, I lost a ton of weight. I was too thin. I couldn't eat. I was out of school for a month and I was a straight A student. My mom was angry with me and my doctor was accusing me of being pregnant when I hadn't even had sex, you know, and it's just like it was just time after time of not being believed and or it's just not being believed, I guess, you know?
Yes. And being disbelieved, like it's also, yes, it's the absence of people believing you, but also it feels like it was also people thinking the worst of you or things about you that weren't true.
Yes. Thank you for voicing that. Yeah, that is part of it.
Yeah. Which is a double whammy, really, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And another piece of this, I said I would come back to my mom, and I do want to say for the record, and I really do believe this. My mom gave me everything she had in her own arsenal. We didn't know about being highly sensitive. We didn't know about the systems being different.
Yeah.
And she came from a faith system that really, the way I interpreted it, and that's the way I'm going to do it, is because, you know, I was taught this faith system as a child. And so the way I filtered that as a child was that, you know, God can heal you if you have enough faith and if you believe. And what I also took from that is then if you are not well, then there's something that you are doing wrong.
Yeah.
And so anytime I was sick, there was also this added layer of, well, then I don't have enough faith.
Yes.
And so there was a shame to being sick or hurt or unwell, which didn't want me, then I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to admit it.
Yeah.
Because it was shameful.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, there was another layer of why, even though I don't have that same faith system now and haven't for a long time, but it's the shame was still attached there for me around being sick.
Yes.
And so when I got the migraine, when I was, you know, having things leading up to that, when I was missing work, all of those things were just adding to the shame of I'm not being the productive member of society I'm supposed to be.
Yeah. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough.
Not good enough. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And it's I'm going to language it this way and hopefully it's not offensive to anybody. It's like if you're out of work because you have something that people can point to like cancer, they can label it. And then most people, because there's so much known about cancer, go, oh, I get it. Oh my God, that's awful. Are you okay?
Yeah.
But when it's something that people don't understand or they can't label, it's harder. Like, and even so I had my own internal shame, and then it was, well, people aren't really, I don't really, I think a lot of people just thought I was making it up too, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Excuse me.
It's all in your head. That's a classic sort of thing you hear people saying.
Yes. I feel like I'm kind of talking in circles. I'm hoping this is making sense.
It is making sense.
Okay.
Certainly is from my point of view here. It is, yeah.
So I think, and going back to kind of my faith for a second too, there was, like, I do believe like our mind can help us feel better. And I do, and I believe in that faith can be helpful. So I'm not at all trying to say anything badly about that. I'm saying how I processed it as a young person. What, it didn't come in as a healthy thing for me. And then because I was also a perfectionist, then it was just like, okay, well, I will ignore when I'm hurting because it's better just to say I'm fine, because then I don't have to carry the shame of not being fine, And I think that compounded just over the years. And so, and that's isolating. Yeah. I don't know where I was going to go with that.
No, it feels like those core wounds started really young, and those messages of, if you are a good girl, then God will make sure that you are well. And for a young girl who is not well, getting those messages, it does not surprise me one bit that you felt shame around that, not good enough, hid it, and tried to push through.
Yeah.
And eventually your body is like, I cannot do this anymore.
That's exactly right. And as you were talking, it reminded me of, I think, why I brought up that last piece, which is that I learned to ignore my body.
Yeah.
Instead of to really listen to it. And so my body had been, I can look back now, and there's years of a ramp up before the year-long migraine. There was years of clues that my body was trying to reach out and talk to me. And I was just like, no, I'm not listening to that.
Yeah. I can't listen in a way, because in a way to listen would mean having to, address the shame and the worthiness. And, in a way, it was easier to live with the pain than it was to live with addressing those beliefs. 100%. And they were now, I'm thinking adult you. And obviously, it still runs very deep. I can see that, hear it, and feel it. But also, those are stories.
Yes.
That you 100%. Told yourself then, but they ran very, very deep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And part of my work since the migraine has been unraveling those stories, and has been, healing that core and sending love to little Robbie, who needed that when she wasn't feeling well. And just to know it's okay. Like, it's okay. You're safe. Even when you're sick, you're safe and you're loved and you're cared for. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of work around that.
Has it helped?
It has definitely helped. And some of the work I'm doing now is being in my body. And that is, I think I had to do the healing, the self-love healing first before I could even be in my body. I had to let myself know I was loved and safe no matter what, because being in my body, it, gives me access to a lot more information. And it's like, okay, well, what am I doing with it now?
Yeah.
And so,
but also it hadn't been safe to be in your body.
It hadn't been safe. Yeah. And, aside from everything we've talked about, I also had trauma as a child. So, I learned early on it wasn't safe to be in my body.
Yeah.
And it was just reiterated in different ways, you know.
Of course.
And I've paid a price for not being able to be in my body.
Yeah.
And now I'm really longing for that. I mean, I think my body is the way that I conceptualize it is my body's been trying to get my attention for so long.
Yeah.
You know, and I just couldn't go there until we had a migraine for a year. And then I was like, well, I don't have a choice. I couldn't I couldn't ignore anymore. Like my whole way of being in the world couldn't work. So I had to keep addressing it until we found something, you know?
Yeah.
And now I'm at the point with the medication I receive that I'm functioning, but I'm still like, I am aware that there's root things that haven't been addressed yet. And so now I'm able to, it's like I'm going into those layers, you know, and it's been, I think we'll talk about this on another podcast because one of the speakers we had on, Katie, and she does somatic work, and I've been working with her, and it's been a really interesting process to see. It's been some really great things and some like, oh my God, things, you know, of being in my body. And I knew I was ready for that. Like I kept feeling ready. I don't know how, as HSPs, I think everyone's going to know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
But it's just like, I just kept feeling like, okay, what's next? What's next is connecting into my body.
Yeah.
Like that's what's next. And so that's the journey I'm currently on right now, is exploring that.
And that's a big step.
Yeah.
A big step after all these years. And I know what you mean, but just in case anybody is listening and who doesn't know what you mean, when you say it wasn't safe to be in your body, okay, so for somebody who's not familiar with that language, I don't know whether anybody's going to be thinking that, but they're going to be kind of thinking, well, it's your body. Well, where else were you? What do you mean by that? I know what you mean, but what do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm glad you asked it in case people are unfamiliar. So for me, I learned very young how to take myself out of really feeling and experiencing through my body what was going on. And I could go up into my head, into my imagination. I could take myself someplace else in order to endure whatever my body was going through.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's called dissociation, and a lot of us do it to varying degrees.
Yes.
And I think I'm learning like how much I've done it.
Yeah. And you know, it's not too late.
No.
It's not too late to come back.
That's right.
To yourself.
I mean, my it's wanting that connection.
Yeah.
It really, like it is. I can feel that and know that. So
yeah. I mean, you did mention early on about being a straight A student as well. And I think as well that plays into this scenario that you're talking about, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but that when we are praised for being, you know, for our intelligence, for what our mind can do, then that heightens the escape route out of our body into our head, because not only is it not safe to be in our body, or not only do we not feel safe to be in our body, it feels a safer place to be in some way in our head. And, you know, intellect seems to be, you know, praised much more than, you know, lots of other wonderful things that come from that are not intellect. You know, I mean, goodness me, who do you ever hear praising kindness and patience and tolerance and, you know, all of those other things? But you know, so that heightens the escape route, really, I think, as well, and keeps us in our head. Would you say?
I completely agree with that 100%. And it made me think about too, like when I first sought out therapy, which was college and right after college for some trauma from childhood, the modality that was used with me was cognitive behavioral therapy, which was literally how to use your brain to overcome.
Exactly.
This is my translation of it, but how to use your brain to overcome your feelings and emotions. And I'm just going to say for the record, I think that there are probably uses for that are helpful for people. For it to be the only way that I was taught to process trauma was actually not helpful for me in processing trauma. What it did was help me learn another tool to push that away, to push the feelings and the emotions away and to carry on, which isn't what I needed.
No, it's not. I mean, CBT is quite popular here in the UK as well. And, it's a sticking plaster at best. Mm-hmm. It certainly is not getting to the root of what is going on. And we don't always need to get to the root, to be fair, but I think there are some things that we do. And I think when in describing what's happened to you, and now you be able to look back a bit with a bit more objectivity and see, I appreciate there's a bit more objectivity, because of course it's happening to you. It has happened to you and is still happening to you to varying degrees. But you can see how things ramped up. You can see that it, you got used to it, but it was gradual over time. But it wasn't always like that. It ramped up, and clearly it's coming from somewhere.
Yes.
Somewhere, something, and all those experiences just that you've had over the years just seem to compound that feeling of not being good enough, and also it's not safe to be in your body.
That's right. 100%. And also there was the sense of I didn't learn how to, in a healthy way, move through emotions, like let them go through, like experience them and let them go through and out of my body. I feel like I have 50 years of emotions stored in here, and some trauma that's just stuck. It's just stuck.
Yeah.
And so my work now is helping it to move through. My first work was loving myself enough to accept myself as I am. That was my first work after, being able to function physically. Then it was that work. And then it was how to when something's here, how to process and move it through so that I don't have more stuff building up. And now it's like, okay, now we're getting into the older stuck stuff. Like, so now what is all that stuff I've been trying to hide in there and not look at,
Yeah. That's so brave. So very brave, because it is, because it is painful. But it sounds to me like you've got to the stage where the pain of living with it is worse than the pain of looking at it.
100%. Yeah.
And you've got the courage to look at it now.
I was just going to say, I think I feel safe enough now to look at it.
Because of the self-love work you've done.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Well done, you.
Thank you. I mean, in talking about it, I can see how things have kind of, built on themselves both ways, like the pain and the trauma, how that builds up, but also the healing, right?
Yes.
How those will build up and help release things. And it's just like, okay, well, now I've created kind of this safe home base now, and now it's safe to do this other work. And
you've got a safe home base to come back to.
100%. Yeah. And I want to say to people, in case I'm not being really clear, my safe home base is within me. Yes. Like, I've created that for me. We can create that for ourselves, even if we didn't have that before.
We absolutely can. Yeah. What a great a point to make and a great example you are to have done that and be telling your story. This is really going to help the right people who need to listen to this. It's going to really, really help them.
Thank you for saying that. I can tell there's still a little bit of stuff there because it's made me tear up.
Yeah.
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 I do know, like, we're not all at the end of the story where everything is the happy ending. Like, most of life is like the middle part, right? Where it's just like we're in it and things are happening. And I just wanted to be able to tell people that even when you're in that stage, like, you're lovable and you're worthy, and you don't have to be some imagined perfect version of yourself fully functioning
No,
to be worthy of love.
No, you're absolutely right. You are enough right now.
We're enough
exactly
right now.
As you are.
100%.
You don't need to do anything, be anything, say anything. You are just enough, exactly as you are right now. And you are worthy of love for just being you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I want people to know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, really important to try and get to the point where you can feel that, where you believe it and you feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I definitely know, like, since the migraine, so, you know, the healing journey from that point forward, there have been times when I just feel like, man, like, I'm still not all okay, you know. And it can feel, I could feel sometimes the old messages of, like, I should feel ashamed for that, or like times when I can't show up the way I want to. It's just like, you know, that shame wants to come in, and it is a constant work for me to be like, I am enough as I am. Like, I am absolutely doing my best, and it's enough.
It is. It is enough. And just going back to something you mentioned earlier, I think, you know, as HSPs, we feel deeply, we process deeply, which means, you know, the trauma we experience, and, you know, all these wounds, like you know, that you've got, that have been prodded and poked and reopened by all these medical professionals over the years, and all these things that have happened to you. You felt it all really, really deeply. You know, we know it has, because we can hear it as you've told us your story. But the other side of that is that HSPs, we can feel the healing really deeply. Yes. And it is possible to heal. And it doesn't mean it goes away. It doesn't mean that somehow miraculously, you know, it sort of goes away, doesn't affect you, you don't think about it or any of those things. It just means that you will still probably be triggered by it, about it in some way. It will be different, but in some way. But you will be able to feel that healing, and you will be able to come back to yourself, to the grounded self that you have discovered, maybe. You know, you will be able to function in a different way. I don't know what that different way is going to be, because it's going to vary for everybody, but the healing is possible, and we feel it really deeply. So, you know, it's not easy, but it is worth it.
Is worth it. And as we've said to people before, you're worth it. Like, it's
exactly,
we used to say it's doable.
It's possible, and it's worth
possible.
it.
Yeah. And you are worth it.
And you are worth it. Yeah.
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 You know, I was thinking about it. For me, the healing, it moves it from an open wound to kind of like, then it's kind of scabbed over, or maybe it feels a little bruised. And then it's like a scar there, where sometimes, you know, a scar can be a little sensitive, right?
Yes.
Like, something gets triggered, but most of the time, you've just carrying on, and it's like, well, that's healed now. There's a reminder of what happened, but it's not this open wound that's constantly hurting. And
that, just like any wound, the healing comes from inside.
Yes. Yeah.
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 Yeah, it does. Yeah. Is that a good place to leave it for today?
Absolutely. I think in some upcoming episodes, you and I are going to be talking about some of the healing modalities we're experiencing now, and we'll share those with people.
Because the healing journey goes on,
it continues.
And we will carry on talking about it. And you mentioned Katie. Now, Katie is going to be, a guest on the podcast. And I don't know where this episode, right now, we don't know where this episode is going to go out in relation to Katie's episode. So that might have already aired. It might be to come. If it has already aired, well, then you've already heard about Katie. But yes, in these episodes, in between the interviews, we are going to be talking about more of our healing journey. And I didn't know, I knew a little bit, but not all of this story that you've talked about today. So, we may well refer back to things because, you've shared your story with us now. And, from me, and I'm sure I speak for our listeners as well, thank you. Thank you very much for being brave and sharing your story. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, Philippa. Thank you for being a safe place where I could share it. And listeners, thank you. I never envisioned in a million years I would be sharing this in a public way, but I do it, like I said, because I do think the more you and I talk about things, the more evident it is that people connect. Like, we need to hear the other stories of people to see ourselves and go, oh yeah, me too. We're not alone. And so it's worth it to me if someone else hears this and says, oh, me too. Oh, I'm not alone. Yeah. So thank you for being that safe place where I could tell it. I appreciate you, friend.
Yeah, you're welcome. And in true fashion, I had a thought then and it's gone. Sorry.
I can really relate to that.
Yes, exactly. I think that probably means it's time to bring this episode. How are you feeling right now?
Thanks for checking in. I'm feeling good, actually. I feel like I had a release, to be honest. I did a lot of tears released today.
You did.
Yeah.
You look a little bit lighter.
Yeah, I feel lighter.
Do you?
Mm-hmm.
That's the miracle of sharing.
Yeah. That's right. It is.
Okay, well, before we get started again, it's probably time to bring this to an end. Do you agree?
I agree, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. And so that's it for today. Remember, there is great strength in your sensitivity.
And the world needs you to be who you are. So bye for me.
And bye from me.
Thanks for listening to HSP Connection. If you've enjoyed listening, we'd love you to hit the follow or subscribe button, as this helps other people find us. And it also means you won't miss an episode.
Also, we'd really appreciate it if you could rate the podcast and share it with anyone you think might be interested. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can also leave us a review.
To get in touch with us, you can email us at hspconnectionpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you with your thoughts and comments on the episodes, as well as suggestions for future topics and guests.
We are both HSP coaches and speakers. And to find out more about Robbie, go to RobbieLeigh, LEIGH.com.
And to find out more about Philippa, go to boldhsp.com. See you next time.